but it's going to be which quarterback is not tight. And traditionally speaking, Lamar Jackson in big playoff games and on the road sometimes does it to himself. And there cannot be a turnover. There just can't.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel presented by Connors and Ferris. I'm Mike Catalana. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, we have a special guest, and it's playoff time, and it is the divisional round. So who better from Baltimore than Morgan Adsit? She is the sports anchor at Fox 45 in Baltimore, has been covering the team before Lamar even got there. She knows all about it, covered a Super Bowl win for this team. Morgan, thanks for being on Buffalo Plus.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I'm about to go shopping here in 2 days for a parka for my travels up there. So I don't think my winter jacket can hold enough underneath right now. So I need a bigger one, and I need something to pack underneath with that cold coming.
Yeah, it'll be cold. I hopefully the big snow stays away, because Buffalo can get it pretty bad. I think it's supposed to be, cold. So we'll see how it goes on Sunday. Get that parka ready. All right, look, you know what the game is, right? It's Lamar and Josh. It is Ravens and Bills. It is the top two guys. I got to talk to you about Lamar. We talk about Lamar a lot because obviously a lot of things between he and Josh Allen. You've been around him a long time. Is he different this year? I mean, he has been great. He's got 2 MVPs, but as a leader, as a player, as a guy, do you see him being different this year?
There is something different about him from a personality standpoint this season. And not that he's ever been bad to us, but doing the media is not really his biggest thing. And sometimes his answers are short. They're very honest, but there's something about him this season, and it just feels like an ease. He's more comfortable. I think he's more comfortable on and off the field, and whatever reason that is. I do think we have some guests with the Hard Knocks cameras coming in, and so some of his media availability has been a little bit longer and a little bit more in depth, but he's never been a guy that shoos us away or isn't willing to talk to us. It's just not his favorite thing, and he's not the most talkative guy, but there is just a calmness and a more joy about him. And some of that kind of goes back to when he finally got paid. Like the 5th-year thing wasn't going to be this thing that dragged out forever. And he finally got his long-term deal here with the Ravens, and the whole, were they going to tag him and trade him? I mean, I think that was a big strain on him. And he was asked about it all the time. We have to ask him about it. That's our job. And he didn't have an agent filling out this stuff for us. It was him and his inner circle. So I think just a combination of the last 2 years of he's paid, he's the franchise guy. They continue to build around him. And the way he's playing this season, and particularly throwing the football, I mean, this is a guy that should, and I believe does, have all the confidence in the world.
It's kind of wild that it was in those circumstances where I don't know if how close it ever got to them moving on from him, but that it even took a while to get him signed. When you see some of the other guys and what they've done and not have done, you just feel like the Ravens, it's Lamar. And the fact that he bet on himself to that point, and then it might be going for a 3rd MVP this year, is kind of amazing, isn't it?
It is, and I think there were growing pains on both part. I mean, Lamar Jackson was doing this on his own, no agent. That's different. That was very different for Ravens general manager Eric DeCosta. When you're thinking about these franchise long-term deals, your highest paid guy that's going to handicap your team and salary for the next few years if you don't kind of figure this out and do it right. I think they both had to learn. I think it's kind of the way it's going. Players represent themselves on social media, in person, through the media. And I think that was a little bit of the tides turning, and both sides kind of had to figure it out. And Lamar was hard to get a hold of. I mean, not in person, but when they broke away, whether it was like he not at OTAs or mandatory minicamp was over, or the break before training camp, I don't think and I know there wasn't a lot of communication between him and the Ravens, because he kind of is just a guy that's like, this is what I'm thinking. I'll get a hold of you when I do. And he did, and it worked. And I think both sides had to kind of just realize that it was going to get done and have faith in it, but be very patient during it. And look what it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to probably win. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about it. His 3rd MVP.
Yeah.
Maybe he should.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you about, because the MVP conversation is probably even bigger in Buffalo than it is because Lamar's already won it twice, and he's having an incredible year. How much is it talked about there, and how confident would you say? It's tough to say with fans, because fans believe a certain thing, and And I understand that thought. But even as a media person, you kind of get a sense, and you get a sense of maybe what you've read or seen about the way the vote would go. How much is it talked about, and how confident do you think people around Baltimore are that he'll win it again?
I think that it was talked about a lot the last month of the season. It is not being talked about now. It's done. Whatever they're going to vote on, those games are done. You shouldn't, and you're not supposed to vote on what's happening right now. As far as the confidence of him getting it, I believe that even the Ravens, the fan base, 100% he should. But there is that, don't be surprised if he doesn't. And there is going to be that turn of, if he doesn't, it's because the voters had Lamar fatigue. And
Yeah.
my whole thing with the MVP thing, and I don't have a vote. So, but if I was voting for MVP, it would be, who is the best player of the season statistically? I don't care about the wins and losses because we know how that can go. I don't care about like a big win for Josh Allen over Kansas City. That to me shouldn't go into it, but it does go into some people's voting, and that's fine. That's their opinion. They think it's the most valuable player that maybe won for the team. But if we're talking statistics, and I know I'm originally from Southwest Ohio, so everybody back off.
Yeah.
But Joe Burrow statistically was the best quarterback this season.
Yeah. And
But
you put up numbers, right? And you would say, like, then, last year Lamar had very good numbers, but the team just won and won and won.
yes.
So sometimes I look at those two ways. I also look at a guy like Joe Burrow, who is great, but he was in a lot of shootouts because the team
Oh
needed to
yeah,
be. And I look at
absolutely.
Josh Allen, from the perspective of the Bills, who he's been really only in a couple of big shootouts where it was back and forth, a ton of points. They played back to back against the Rams and the Lions. They lost to the Lions. They lost to the Rams, beat the Lions, and he combined for 10 touchdowns and almost it was over 800 yards of offense in those two games when you're playing like that. So I do see how that comes into play. It's just kind of fascinating now to see, because like you said, these two are going to play on the field Sunday. It has nothing to do with what happens in the game, but there'll be a narrative that goes with it, as in, Josh won it, but Lamar won the game, or
Mhm.
Lamar won it, but Josh won the game. It could go to the same player. I think it's going to be something to see, but obviously, I think this year they are both incredible with the
Oh yeah.
way they have played. And while their styles are a little different in terms of speed, I guess power, maybe when you're talking about running the ball, boy, what they do for their teams is pretty similar in the fact that they can beat you either way, right?
Oh, 100%. And like any team, if you lose your quarterback, you're not going to win. And the way that not only they play, but the franchises have built around them. And now they're consistently in this picture where you can think we're almost to the AFC championship, but we got to get to the Super Bowl. And it's not only get to the Super Bowl, we got to win. They're very similar in that
Yeah.
comparison. Lamar has the two MVPs. So, like, I don't think a third necessarily does anything for his legacy. He's hunting the bigger thing. But I think for Josh Allen to get an MVP does kind of boost it up a little bit. But I think they'll both tell you like they could care less about that, right? I mean, their legacy and who they are and where this is going to go is what they're going to do in the postseason. And right now they're both very similar in that fashion of they just can't get over that Kansas City hump.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, saw it last year. Kansas City came in, beat the Bills in Buffalo, beat the Ravens in Baltimore. And it really is. Both players have been to the AFC Championship game. Both have lost to the Chiefs. The Bills can't get by the Chiefs. They couldn't get by Joe Burrow. I mean, it really is something. And that's what I wondered about the way Lamar is. There is pressure on him in that way. As great as he is, and the multiple MVPs, just like with Josh Allen, we all know quarterbacks get judged on winning. They just do. Stats are great. They can put up a ton of them. MVPs are wonderful. But for whatever the reason is, they impact the game so much, it comes to winning. And you said about Lamar being a little looser, a little lighter, a little happier on and off the field. People would say that, and I would say that about Josh Allen this year too. The roster changed, things lightened up a little bit for him, and he has played with that freedom. But both come into the game Sunday knowing how massive this game is. I would say legacy, that's sort of after. Right now, it's to try to win a Super Bowl specifically for this year. But it is kind of interesting with all this pressure on both of them. I think both of the players are playing with that sense of, I don't know if it'd be calm, but that would really be the word I would use.
And I think that is going to be what is going to happen this game. I'll kind of go over my biggest key that people don't think is very sexy with special teams later. That could be the outcome of this game, but
Right.
it's going to be which quarterback is not tight. And traditionally speaking, Lamar Jackson in big playoff games and on the road sometimes does it to himself. And there cannot be a turnover. There just can't. While both offenses can throw up and throw up a ton of points and do it quickly, Josh Allen and the Bills are kind of different in that backs against the wall fashion, that there's a little bit of the Ravens can't afford early mistakes, big holes, and taking themselves out of the game, because mentally something does break with this offense when that happens traditionally since 2019 in the playoffs. And some of it is you just run into a really good team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. These are the best teams that are left and remaining. But as far as legacy standpoint, I think that pressure, and he puts it on himself. He'll be the first to say it. When the Ravens drafted him, he said he wanted to win a Super Bowl. So he's logical that he knows that that needs to be the next step. And outside, sadly, you're kind of a victim of your own success, where what else can the Ravens show you? Since
Yeah.
2019, twice they've shown you the best team in the AFC in the regular season. And then now for a third time, one of the best teams in the regular season in the AFC, winning the AFC North again in back-to-back seasons. And it's not right, probably not fair, but it's not about winning the regular season in any
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah. The Bills know all about it. Getting this far, they made the AFC Championship in 2020. And then since then, the losses have been in this divisional round. So there's other weapons to talk about, but I have to, we have to talk about Derrick Henry and what he has meant to this offense and to Lamar, because running backs are back. We know that. And when you have the special one, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, those two alone, what they do, from what you have seen, is that the biggest thing for Lamar and the Ravens this year? Just this monster in the backfield with him.
Oh, 100%. Because we talk about making a team one-dimensional, whether you take away the run, you take away the pass. For the Ravens, you have to take away the run twice. You're already stacking the box and you're worried about Lamar and what he can do. But now you've got Derrick Henry, and he is a guy that gets all of his yards after contact. And he will destroy you for a 75-plus touchdown late in the game or huge run. Or if we want to go to week 4, he will absolutely put your team on its heels from the jump and shock. Were you at that game? Did you
Oh,
travel?
yeah, 92 yards, yeah.
I mean, put the Bills in shock mode and
Yeah.
never got out of it. And the Ravens defense was not good at that point, not nearly what they are today. The offense clicked in that moment in week 4 and has carried on. But he is such a difference for this offense, because you already have to worry about Lamar running. You already have to worry about Lamar improvising. And now he's able to throw it downfield really well with some receivers and tight ends and running backs like Justice Hill out of the backfield that have stepped up in the passing game. And a lot of it has to do with year 2 under Todd Monken. They're more comfortable, more familiar. Lamar is throwing dimes and showing he is not just a running quarterback, he is a passing quarterback. But Derrick Henry can destroy you. And that has been such the thing. And I think if the Ravens do win the Super Bowl, it's because of Derrick Henry. I mean,
Yeah. He has made a massive difference. And obviously, we joke about, he looks like he's in the wrong position group when he's on the field.
it's huge.
It's like he should be with the defensive tackles or whatever. He's a monster physically. And it just, I would say that he just gives them another level of confidence that at any point you just turn it over to him. I mean, that's been the difference, right? They could always run it pretty well, and then Lamar was the guy. But when you see him, I mean, the Bills saw him in Tennessee too. Believe me, they've seen enough of him. And it's the weakness. It has been the weakness of the Bills' defense, is the run defense. So that is huge for them. So we know how good Henry is. We know how good Lamar is. Other players on offense. Now, we're recording this on Tuesday. We don't know anything about Zay Flowers. It didn't sound great, but I would just ask you this. Since I'm saying this, we're recording this before we know if he'll play. What does it mean to them with him on the field or off the field offensively?
I think it means on the field, you get to do everything that you want to do. Off the field, you have to kind of get creative. I don't think, even though you've talked about the Bills defense, run defense in particular, I don't think they're going to be able to bully them for nearly 300 yards on the ground like they did the Steelers. I think the Steelers defense, while we say on paper is better and should have been better than that, that team limped into the playoffs and has a lot of issues like internally of this team just kind of faltering at the end. And I think that played into a lot of it. I don't think the Ravens can go in there and say, we're going to have our second touchdown drive be 13 carries. No
Right.
passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be one-dimensional because we want to, because we can. I don't think that's going to happen. So I do think if Zay Flowers doesn't play, the Ravens have the weapons, whether it's their tight ends with Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. I mentioned Justice Hill, the running back, who is way more of a receiving target than a running target for the Ravens. And then, of course, you have Rashad Bateman. But Zay Flowers is your yak guy. He's your guy stretching the defense along with Rashad Bateman. And when they don't have him, they don't have that much. But I don't think it's like you said, it's Tuesday. John Harbaugh said on Monday, it doesn't matter if he practices. They're just going to wait and see how this week goes. But if you saw him last week walking around the locker room, you don't have a lot of faith and confidence that even if he's on that field, he's going to be 100%. This is a week's thing, in my opinion, especially with the cold.
Yes.
Yeah, like you have a knee injury and it's cold. That could be some issues. So without him, it ruins the passing game, and I don't think they're going to be able to run it like they did on the Steelers. So it does take away a weapon for the Ravens that they're going to have to make up for elsewhere.
What I've found is, when a player's coming off an injury and they don't practice, they don't play. I know what Harbaugh's saying, and it kind of makes sense to just leave that out there. If he's monitoring an injury or just, a guy's banged up a little bit and they give him some time off, maybe. But if they don't trust him to go through at least one practice, they usually don't put him on the field. But hey, it's the divisional round, so I guess you never know. You mentioned Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
That guy always seems, this is the way when I watch the Ravens, I'm seeing Lamar. He's making those moves. He's running around. Next thing you know, Bateman's in the end zone. And he's got him for a touchdown. That guy seems to find Bateman a lot.
He is a phenomenal route runner.
Yeah.
Phenomenal route runner. I mean, turns guys around. Guys are going like this with Bateman that you don't usually see. And it's something that was kind of, to his credit, what they drafted him for, but he dealt with a lot of injuries when he first came out. And last year, the routes were there. He was open. The connection with Lamar Jackson wasn't there. And most of it was on Lamar. He was missing him. But then when the big plays came, Bateman wasn't producing. They are just clicking. And for someone like Rashad Bateman, I think the confidence is there. He knew this all along. When you would see him practice in training camp, he was the MVP of training camp. What this guy could do was amazing, but just wasn't translating. It did a little bit last season, but this season in the production. But again, it's also Derrick Henry, like we mentioned, it's Derrick Henry. You have to think about stopping Derrick Henry and Lamar first.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you've got Mark Andrews. Oh, and then you've got Zay Flowers. And then you've got Rashad Bateman. So he's definitely benefiting from being on a really good offense that he doesn't have to be the number one getting 100 yards every game. Probably wants to. Wide receivers want that. But they don't have anybody on this team that has to be like that. They can spread it around that much.
Yeah. Defensively, I love Kyle Hamilton as a player.
Yeah. He's a freak.
What were they doing with him? I mean, they had him in the slot. It seems like they've moved him around. I just think when that guy's roaming around in the defense, he's dangerous at any time. It seemed like they made some adjustments, right, between he and Marlon Humphrey to get him in the right spot, and the defense has clicked since then.
Yeah, so last year, Mike McDonald moved him around a lot. He was up a lot. He was up at the line of scrimmage, nickel dime a lot, kind of, and not really back, because they had the safety play in their mind that was not a struggle. This season, they kind of tried to do that, and he had a little bit of some injuries, like lingering stuff from last season, a few things during camp, and new defensive coordinator under Zach Orr. Their secondary was just not good. And so now he's back now. They dropped him back. He's a true plain safety. They benched Marcus Williams, the other safety. Darius Washington, an undrafted guy, has completely changed this defense. So they are playing Kyle Hamilton as a true safety now. And the rest of the secondary has really stepped up. And it has helped. You mentioned Marlon Humphrey. I mean, he's all pro Marlo now. We kind of thought he was maybe going to be done last year. He's aging. There's been some injuries. So he's playing really well. Their weakness is pass defense from the beginning of the season. I still fear that has been a weakness that they've covered up better, but do expect Josh Allen to have quite a bit of passing yards and big success plays against this defense because of the secondary.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the Bills play it because sometimes you see a game where you're just trying to keep the other quarterback off the field. I'm
Yeah.
sure you see it with Lamar where a team's trying to hold the ball. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
think this one is going to be like, we need to score because they're going to score. And
100%.
a lot of times, some of these games, you're like, that's the playoffs. It's going to be tighter. Um, I think both teams are in the 30s in this one. I think it's that kind of game. I mean, we've seen it before. Bills and Chiefs have had that where it's just gone back and forth, but I just feel like it's going to be match one against the other. And Allen, this year, their first team to ever have 30 plus rushing touchdowns and 30 plus passing touchdowns. They've done it both ways,
Mhm.
but there was a time when, they're going to need to open it up. And I do think from what you're saying too, like they may see some opportunities in that Baltimore secondary to take advantage, whether it's, Khalil, guys that sometimes just fans who don't pay as much attention to the team don't know, but a guy like Khalil Shakir has had a great year. Mac Hollins leads them in touchdown catches and not wearing shoes. And, they have some guys, even though they don't have a player at that level, but it may take that out of Josh. That and probably putting the ball in his hands and letting him run with it a little bit more too, because it's so effective for the Bills.
Yeah, they're gonna find 21, Brandon Stevens, sadly, and probably come his way. He is one of the best corners for the Ravens as far as cover. He's always there, but making a play on the ball
Mhm.
has been an issue, and he's had some pretty big flags called. Some, they wanna say no, but, they're called. It's pass interference and the ball goes to that spot. So those are always challenging. The Steelers took advantage of something that they saw in the Ravens defense in the 3rd quarter, and they had 2 touchdowns for 30 plus yards, both of them.
Yeah.
And while it seemed out of hand because the Ravens offense was so in sync and kept putting up touchdowns and had a response when that happened and kind of always up 2 scores, it was this, like I mentioned earlier, it was the Steelers. Like the Steelers were not a team that was going to go in there and beat the Ravens. Absolutely not. Something about them changed in December and it did not carry over in a good way to the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. It did not. And the other guy I wanted to mention because he's been so good for so long is Roquan Smith and
Yeah.
how he's played. It's another guy. He's supposed to be getting older, right?
He's supposed to.
Yeah.
Knock
So
on him at the beginning that he was a little heavy and a little sluggish at the beginning, but he's doing just fine.
yeah,
He's that guy too that you want. You've probably seen it too. Sometimes I think players have changed, and that's
yeah,
kind of in all sports. People are more friendly, they're more chill. They're kind of like, if I need this, I
yeah,
don't need this. Um, Roquan wants to, not really, but he's going to line up and try to kill you. Not in a bad way. I'm not saying he's
yeah,
literally trying to do it, but he is old school.
yeah,
He talks that way too. He's like, line up, man against man. I'm gonna bet on myself that I'm gonna embarrass you. And he's real. When he gets that helmet on, there's another level for him. And it reminds me of like the old school players, like your Rays. Obviously,
yeah,
Roquan Smith is not Ray Lewis yet, but when you have him in the middle of the defense, commanding the defense, it's worked. And they also made a change beside him at inside linebacker. It's not Trenton Simpson, the guy that they
mhm,
didn't offer Patrick Queen a
right,
contract for and drafted. He's been benched. It's been a rotation with Malik Harrison and Chris Board, veterans,
mhm,
and that's made a huge difference for this defense. Their run defense has been phenomenal all season. Middle of defense has gotten better. You can still expose them with tight ends through the middle of the field.
yeah,
It's gonna be
and the
interesting.
Bill,
There's just gonna
yeah,
be big play. I think we're gonna look at this and be like, "Oh my gosh, both defenses were horrible." No, it's gonna be both offenses are that
yeah.
great.
I think so too. I think it's going to be teams at their best with two tremendous quarterbacks, just seeing who can make the most plays. I want to go to your head coach with John Harbaugh. Won that Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and since that time, what it was 4 out of 5 years, I think I wrote down that they missed the playoffs. Since that time, since that Super Bowl, 4 wins and 6 losses. Now, like many coaches, like the guy in Pittsburgh, who's won a Super Bowl, people talk about. I never think hot seat for
Mhm.
coaches that have won this much, especially in a place. But you know how it goes
Yeah.
sometimes where he's won, it's been good, and then there's disappointment because you set the bar. Now, Sean McDermott doesn't have that Super Bowl, but he does have a lot of very good teams with a quarterback and disappointment. Where's the fan base on Harbaugh? Because obviously he's won. He's been one of the best coaches in the league, but they've had him for a long time. Where are they now, and how much pressure is on him to get this team past this point?
I personally feel like 0, but I will say the fan thing before I say that and it gets
Yeah.
clipped the fan base that's the loudest, the ones that you hear, they want him gone,
Yeah.
which is just absolutely insane. Some of that
Right.
has gone away a little bit, but he won the North, and look what they've done. Like, look what they've done. Again, it
Yeah.
does come down to it's not about the regular season awards, but when you're talking about keeping your coach and keeping your system intact, it can be. And he lost Mike McDonald last year and made a huge gamble by promoting Zach Orr, a former player, first time defensive coordinator. And that did not look good at the beginning. And they brought in Dean Pease, former defensive coordinator, and made some adjustments that way, and it's helped. But he could be losing Todd Monken. You could be
Yeah.
losing your offensive coordinator. Probably should be losing your offensive coordinator with what he's done if he chooses to be a head coach somewhere. Age, personality might not be a draw for some franchises wanting to get their coach in. But the crazy loud fan base has wanted him gone after every loss. Um, Not smart. And
Yeah.
it's not what the Ravens do, and it's why the Ravens are always in contention.
Hey, Morgan, I was thinking about this. Like, you see the way the search is going on for coaches.
Mhm.
Everybody's looking
Mhm.
for the guy. And all of a sudden, Mike McCarthy looks really good, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he's
Yeah.
interviewing with like 3 teams. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm saying is it's Mike McCarthy. And that Sean McDermott hears that all the time. They've had some bad losses in the playoffs,
Mhm.
but he took over a franchise that was a disaster, and they just won the division again. They're in the playoffs every year. They can't beat Mahomes. They can't beat Burrow so
Yeah.
far in the playoffs, right? Those are the big losses. But I was thinking about if Sean McDermott was on the open market, he'd have a job in 10 minutes. I mean, it's just obvious when you see a guy
Yes.
who can build a program. And I asked that about Harbaugh only because there is a certain fatigue level that happens with coaches. Now, he made it to the AFC title game. They had the home game last year, and then it obviously didn't. I can tell you this, it didn't go the way the Ravens wanted. It didn't go the way Bills fans wanted either, because once
Mhm.
they were out, oh my God, they just wanted the Chiefs out. And of course, the Chiefs do what the Chiefs do. And they went on and won it. But at the same time, I just always wonder about the way it goes for a coach who's had a
Mhm.
lot of success, but the success also sets him up for criticism because
Right.
they always seem to be in it that way.
You're a victim
Um,
of it. The only way I
yeah,
think it being completely, totally people or have their torches and want him gone after this game is if the Ravens do what they've done and in big moments in those playoff games with Lamar is take themselves out of the game. Like
yeah,
last year against the Chiefs, like not running the football. You just can't if they for some reason do what they did the first 2 weeks of the season and don't use Derrick Henry like they have towards the end, it would be they've done it to themselves. They
yeah. That would be
overthought it, they were
yeah,
too cute.
that
Turnovers,
would be
that goes
criminal.
more on players. Oh, I mean, if they did what they did the first couple weeks of the season was like, "You know you brought Derrick Henry in, right?
Yeah.
Let's use him." That would be the only way if it was some catastrophic brain fart, you overthought this whole game and gave it away, which it's not gonna happen.
You hinted at the beginning about special teams
Yes.
and what you thought could be a difference in this game. So I'll ask you about that specifically, and then give me the way you think this game's going to go.
Okay, perfect. I do think go back to turnovers with quarterback play will be key number 1, but my biggest thing that not a lot of people are gonna talk about is the Ravens' struggles on special team. They've struggled with field position. They had some muffed punts and some questionable shaky, it goes over my shoulder, yet I'm still gonna field it. They've struggled at a punt returner. They had some things that could have went really wrong against the Steelers and didn't, and while he's been great and not an issue or even a topic of concern or someone they've used a lot post their bye week, Justin Tucker and kicks, you would have to think those misses and those concerns that even go back to last year are still kind of there. So I think that field position and who makes or misses the most could be this. If the quarterbacks play like they're supposed to and the offenses play like they're supposed to, and they don't turn the ball over and no one takes themselves out of the game, this is going to come down to special teams. And it's kind of like that boring thing that no one wants to see and watch from a fan base thing, but it's huge. And it's been a whisper and a problem with the Ravens all season.
Okay, so Bills fans are watching this and they're going, she's talking about the Bills special teams, right? You described the Bills special teams. They gave up another fake punt for a first down.
Yeah. Oh, that was bad.
Twice
Yeah.
that has happened. Nobody was paying attention. They were in the wrong setup. They have had issues all year long with different parts of special teams. Uh, and then, how about at the end of a game? I know the game was over, but it was a punt by the Rams, and they only had 9 players on 9. 9. That is tough to do. Sometimes there's one
Sure
guy
is.
that screws up.
Yeah,
And then
2.
Tyler Bass has never been at the level of your kicker, but he was a very good kicker for the Bills.
Mhm.
And they continue to say they have confidence. Everybody saw him miss the one against the Chiefs last year, but it's been other things. And he missed an extra point. Like, he has been just, I don't know where the confidence level is. I do not think the Bills want this to come down to special teams either. But I guess it could, right? If everything else goes that way.
I think so. I mean, I really do, and that's catastrophic for any team. You can't make any mistakes in the playoffs, and if you do, it can't be disastrous, and it can't be leaving points off the field, and it can't be turnovers. So turnovers and special teams, in my opinion, and you asked how it's going to go. I keep flip-flopping. It opened up where the Bills were a 1-point favorite. Now the Ravens are a 1-point favorite. I'm in your mind that the offenses are going to be exciting and do a lot, but I don't know about 30 for both of them. I think this will be that weird, like they're just running the ball and defense steps up when it doesn't go to plan like you think it should. You think it should be a shootout, should be like Ravens, Bengals type back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't know. I think playoff football eventually shows up with defense and running the football, and it's going to be cold, and the Ravens are on the road. I flip a coin. People ask me all the time who's going to win. Until they do it, until I see that big Ravens playoff win against a really good team when it matters most, because to me right now, this spot is them against the Chiefs, even though it's the Bills, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That I'm going Buffalo, and probably by 3.
Yeah, it's fascinating the way you're describing it, because it really is the Bills too, in that same case. That's why I say they do it a little differently, but there's so many things that are similar between these two teams in the way they operate, the way the quarterbacks are so important to them. And the Bills have done that. Now that, Josh Allen is at home, he's played well on the road in the playoffs. I mean, he had the 13-second game in Kansas City. Is one of the great games I've ever seen a quarterback play, and he lost. So sometimes when you'll hear fan bases say, this guy can't win games, I'm like, the man gave them the lead 3 times in the last 5 minutes of the game, and they blew it every time. And then he's played that way. And then he's had other games. It's funny, when these two teams played each other, Lamar was not great in that game, and Allen was okay. Like, that was back when they met in the playoffs, and Lamar threw that pick 6 that went the distance. But it feels like 100 years ago.
It sure does.
Where those players are and where those teams are. I won't say it means more to the Bills than the Ravens. I don't know how you could say that.
You can't, right?
But it's at home. They've lost at home in the division round 2 straight years.
And undefeated this season, right, at home?
Undefeated at home.
Yeah, that'd be a way to go.
The only game they've lost, I believe, in their last 14 at home was the Kansas City game in the playoffs last year. And you know all about what happens to a team when they lose at home to the Chiefs in the playoffs, is what happened last year. I think it's a 3-point game too. I haven't picked it on our air yet. I think I'm going to pick the Bills. I think that's where I am in this. But I told somebody, some fan was asking me, what do you think, as you get all the time? And I said, here's what I could tell you. Your team could play really well this week and lose. That's the level we're at. The JV guys are gone. The Steelers, the Broncos, those teams are gone. For the most part, it's the studs that are out there now. Like these teams, the Chiefs. I mean, this is who is out there in the playoffs. And I think you can play well and lose. That's what it is at this level of the playoffs. So we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. And isn't it cool we get to cover by far the game of the week in the NFL and in the playoffs? I think it's a game everybody's been waiting for.
100%. And like we mentioned earlier, they're not going head to head, but they are.
Yeah.
It's Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And you got to worry about that human nature of knowing how big this is.
Yeah.
Knowing what's next. I mean, Kansas City still has to win, but knowing what's next. I still think the Ravens and Bills are better in my mind on paper and how they've played this season than Kansas City.
Yeah.
But you can never count out the Chiefs in the postseason. No. They can make you look like fools.
As everyone has found out. Hey, Morgan, let everybody know where they can follow you on social media to get more on the Ravens.
Yeah, you got it. It's just my name, at Morgan Adsit. ADSIT. You got it.
Simple enough. You were great. We really appreciate all your insight. You certainly know this Ravens team, and we look forward to seeing you.
Oh, wait, I need one thing. From you.
What do you got?
Wings. One spot. I only have one spot.
Barbell.
All right, there we go.
It's going to be crowded.
One spot, maybe if that's too crowded. Give me 2 spots.
Well, I mean, you can always go, anchor bar. is
Okay.
kind of the thing.
And
So
yeah.
there's everybody has the one is barbell. Even if
Okay.
you've got to, order, pick them up, save yourself some
Home.
time.
Just
That
leave them
hey,
outside in the cold.
and barbell is not a sponsor here, but they are. I think for a lot of people they are number one, and you know they take it pretty seriously here.
I like it.
So
Hey, I take my wings seriously too. I'm sure they'll be phenomenal.
they'll be great.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll see you up in Orchard Park on Sunday. Thank you again. Morgan Adsit. She is from Fox 45 in Baltimore. She knows those Ravens well, and we appreciate her time today with us. That's going to do it for us. Again, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel presented by Connors and Ferris.